is where do you see yourself? I mean, Leah has actually says, well, I really see myself as, sort of standing squarely in engineering. When you're looking at somebody on the other side, that would be in, liberal arts, where do they miss the point from your perspective? And where do you see your own people, your own peeps, where do they miss the point? Who wants to start first? You want to start, Leah?
Sure. So the problem is, I'm just going to say this. If I'm talking to Bud, he never misses the point. So this is a really hard question to ask. So I'm just going to, so I have to visualize. So, I think for, I'll do the less risky and talk about where I think the engineers miss the point. I think it is less than it used to be, but I think we still have a lot of students studying engineering because they think that they're going to get to do math and build things all day long, and the fact that they don't like writing and are afraid of public speaking, and they're not really sure about any of this other stuff, that engineering is a great home for them. And it's changing. I mean, it really is changing, and there's been a lot of work that's been done in sort of the public imaging. There's a report called Changing the Conversation, Improving the Public Understanding of Engineering, which really basically sort of beats us all over the head and says, well, you just stop talking about the math and science and talk about what you do and the impact it has in the world. Yeah. So I actually, on my car, for the only time in my life, it's magnetic, so I can take it off when I want, but it's a bumper sticker. And it says, because dreams need doing. And it's, this is actually an engineering, it says, engineeringchallenges.org. And so I think that we let the stereotypes still play a little too big a role in thinking about, what do we need to be good at. Yeah. I think.
Let me just say here also, when you say you miss the point, it's not a criticism. It says it's like this tells you something about the speaker. A lot of times when I'm asking, or like some of the stuff we cut out, I go, I'm going to ask you a question, but I think you need to understand. Maybe we need to change this question, or you'll get where I'm missing it, and it informs you both directions.
On the other side, I'm actually going to borrow from Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is quite outspoken about how you can go to a cocktail party and you're talking to people and what do you do, and well, I'm a scientist, I'm an engineer, and I'm like, well, I'm an author, but then the response will be, well, but I don't do math. And that's a pretty acceptable answer in the world. But it shouldn't be.
So you're a biologist?
There's a missing symmetry, that for me, even as an engineer, to say, well, I don't do words, that's
a little hollow for you.
But I don't do math.
It's real.
And I'm looking at Vera Weiser, who taught my daughter math. But I don't do math is somehow still an okay way of thinking about things. But if you actually look at the world we live in, and there's always been math, but now there's technology, and it's really pretty hard for you not to be engaged with that technology somehow, but just taking it as a given without trying to understand anything about it.
Well, also one part of the solution is to see what's a good solution and a bad solution. Part of that requires a little math. It's a little difficult to have the conversation. Yeah. And so that's one of the stumbling blocks. Who's next? Who wants to leap in there? Bracken, go ahead. And then Chuck.
I would probably give kind of in the same vein. If I were talking to the STEM students, I'd say, do you want to be the machine or do you want to be the result? And I think, if you do nothing but become an engineer who, follows the scientific method, or the scientist, and you follow A plus B plus C plus D, you are part of the machine, and you're making a big difference in the world, and it's really exciting. But the world we're headed into isn't that world. It's a world where there are machines that do that. We're going to be in a world where we're all going to be creatives. And I'd say, if I were in the STEM fields today, I'd want to be augmenting my skill set with with things that will make me more creative, which doesn't mean that, no offense to all of us liberal arts majors, that we're all creative. But certainly having experience across a wider range of disciplines, a wider range of experiences, a wider range of subjects, simply gives you more analogies to compare things, to apply to new things. And I think that is the definition of, or it's one of the definitions of IQ, it's another definition of creativity, the ability to take things and apply them, and apply analogies that don't seem to belong there. So I think that's, I would say, gosh, if you want to be if you want to be a doer, maybe the last 100 years a doer could be a nothing but an engineer. But I think in the next 50 years, the doers have to be doers and dreamers and analogists, or if that's even a word.
Check.
So the waters I swim in every day in my job, I'm privileged to be able to work with both designers and engineers. So creative designers, graphic designers, industrial designers, interaction designers, and engineers. And it's interesting, I've coined a term that we use at Newell. I've called them otters and beavers. The otters are the designers that have a very almost playful way of problem solving. They will cobble things together, cobble little models together that are actually working through visually problem solving. And then you've got the engineers that by and large, really like to kind of think about a problem, solve a problem. They'll just beaver away at it until they land on a solution. And where I found that the magic really occurs is when you can get both sides past their language. So so if you can get
You're stuck you're missing the point because you're speaking English, I'm speaking French.
Exactly. And where I spend probably the majority of my time is trying to act as translator between these two groups, because they both are onto very creative solutions to maybe the same problem, but they're just sort of talking past each other because, perhaps the engineering team might be using mathematics or technical terms that are just, beyond the training of the design team. The designers may be using terminologies about surface and form and things that the engineers are sort of struggling to grasp. So, this notion of finding common language and common ground between these two disciplines, to my mind, is one where you begin to unlock this potential that Bracken was describing in terms of really being able to solve problems that are here today and the problems that will be here tomorrow.
Well, I'm just loving the look on Jackie's face. Talk to us, girl.
Well, the difficulty that I'm having here is that when I answer the question for myself, my tendency is to say I stand with the humans. Okay? And in saying that, it seems to me that as human beings, we have the capacity to go beyond our predispositions. And so some of us have talents and abilities, some of us have habits, and those habits can be a pretty broad range of things. We don't all have to be alike. The question is, how do we learn? And I think we all have to learn to talk with each other. How do we learn to engage with each other? So it's not just what do we miss? Why do we get it? We work at it to get it. So just as our not working at it gives all this opportunity for missing the point, if you know that there is the potential for missing the point, then do you have the commitment to work on getting the point? And I think that's what ties into what you were saying. The other thing that strikes me about all of this is that human beings have the habit, as if I were going to give a name last time, it would have been Octavia Butler. Does anybody know her? Yeah, she's my heroine. Because one of the things that she said that lingers with me is that the problem with human beings is that we're both intelligent and hierarchical. If we were one or the other, we wouldn't have the problem, but we're both. And so part of the problem of having the dichotomies with science and other, or with liberal arts and other, is that we assume that that's natural. And I don't think there's anything natural at all about it. I think we make it up. And so the point that to me is the important point is that we have to commit to crossing whatever divides are created by our predispositions or our habits or our inclinations or whatever it is, so that we can get to being what I would prefer to be, and that is more human in our interactions with each other. So I don't necessarily see that just because you're a scientist or you work with scientists that there's something weird about you and I don't have to listen or pay attention or try to understand, or vice versa.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's really very interesting. My colleague, Professor Lorton, and I, it all started when I started this business, a biotech program, and that business has like 12 major disciplines, one of which is science. So you start and end with science, and then, you got everything. You got venture capital, and you got bioenterprise law, and you've got, it just goes on, intellectual property, and you've got multinational expertise and bioethics and social considerations and media and information. So you got all these expertises, most of whom don't even talk to each other, but you need all of them to make it work. So if we take that analogy here, what we did then is we had people say, I don't do science. I hate science. And it's like, turned out they had a math anxiety. They didn't do physics and chemistry. Oh, biology, easy, Or we had people who, you can't do science today, as you could 30 years ago, without being deeply embedded in technology. And 15% of people are very technophobic. So does that mean you can't be a scientist? What does that mean? And so our test, I think what's relevant here is to see people who were technologists could actually like science better without the technology. With the science. It's like, wait a minute, and we got people with math anxiety. It's like, no, they can't get over their anxiety. They are who they are, But if we can get an appreciation for, knowing yourself, saying, well, I don't do this, I don't do heart surgery. I can still, it's like, I cook. Other people don't, but I can appreciate you got to cook, And so you can do these things. It's like how we figure out. If you don't see what all the elements are of the problems you're trying to solve, then you only see your elements. So to your point, Jackie, it's like, hey, we're all humans, and to being on the engineering side, because we like to be a little more analytical. Can't we put them all in boxes? We have a lot of boxes. It's like, well, can we put 20 kind of different skills that go out here, 20 kind of knowledges or experiences that might go into a solution? Like, you have to ask everybody who's going to be affected. Well, engineers, then we don't say, no, we build it and then we plug it in and we say, somebody's going to buy it. So whoa, wait a minute, that's not how it works. Now, someone in the liberal arts has that sensitivity right up front. Ethics as an example of something. So it's almost like the conversation here. Now, there's a question here.